All right, diving into fluoride today, huh? A topic that's been, a bit of a hot button issue over the
Oh,
years.
yeah, for sure.
We've got this academic paper. It's pretty comprehensive, covers everything from how fluoride was discovered to the controversies and the impact on our health. So are you ready to dig in and maybe, separate fact from fiction?
Yeah, I'm ready. I think it's really interesting how, a simple element like fluoride can really spark such passionate opinions. I think it'll be a pretty interesting deep dive.
Okay, well, let's kick things off with a little story that really caught my eye in this paper, the Colorado brown stain. It talks about this town where, well, everyone's teeth were brown, but get this, they hardly had any cavities.
Yeah, it's like a real-life dental mystery. It's actually a classic example of how scientific curiosity, can lead to these unexpected breakthroughs. So back in the early 1900s, there was this dentist named Frederick McKay, and he was determined to figure out what was causing this brown stain.
He was on a mission.
Yeah, spent years investigating and eventually traced it back to, you guessed it, fluoride in the drinking water.
So high levels of natural fluoride were causing the staining, but also seemed to protect those teeth from decay.
Exactly, yeah. And that realization basically set off this chain of events, ultimately leading to the first community water fluoridation project in Grand Rapids, Michigan, back in 1945. And the results were pretty amazing. Cavities plummeted, and it really kind of shifted the landscape of public health when it comes to dentistry.
Wow, so like a single discovery had this huge ripple effect. But before we, go too far, let's make sure we're all on the same page about what fluoride actually does to our teeth.
Right. Well, at its core, fluoride basically strengthens tooth enamel, making it more resistant to acid attacks. And acid attacks, as you know, are really the culprits behind cavities.
Yeah, makes sense.
So you see, our tooth enamel is made up mostly of a mineral called hydroxyapatite, and when fluoride interacts with it, it actually forms fluorapatite, which is a much tougher and more resilient mineral.
Oh, so it's not just about adding a protective layer. It's actually transforming the enamel itself, like at a molecular level.
Yeah, that's right. It's pretty amazing, and this chemical change is really what makes fluoride so effective in preventing those cavities. In fact, studies have shown over and over again that community water fluoridation can reduce tooth decay by a significant amount. We're talking 20 to 40%, which, when you think about it, translates to millions of avoided dental procedures, and billions saved in healthcare costs every year.
Wow, those numbers are impressive. It really kind of highlights the impact of fluoride on, a big scale. But I know there's also been a lot of debate, right, surrounding fluoride, particularly when it comes to the potential risks. What are some of the concerns that people have raised?
Yeah, you're right. Fluoride definitely isn't without its controversies. I think one of the most common concerns is dental fluorosis. This happens when kids consume too much fluoride while their teeth are still developing.
So too much of a good thing can actually backfire in this case.
Yeah, that's right. But it's really important to note that in most cases, dental fluorosis is just a cosmetic issue. It might cause these faint white streaks or spots on the enamel.
Right.
In severe cases, though, it can lead to brown staining, even pitting of the enamel, which, obviously is a bigger problem.
Okay, that makes sense. What about skeletal fluorosis? I've heard that's a more serious issue.
Yeah, so skeletal fluorosis is a condition that affects the bones, and it's caused by chronic exposure to very high levels of fluoride, way more than what you'd find in fluoridated water, especially in developed countries. It's mostly seen in regions with naturally high fluoride levels in the groundwater.
So more of a regional problem rather than a widespread concern?
Pretty much, yeah. And then there's also the ongoing debate about the potential neurodevelopmental effects of fluoride, particularly its impact on things like cognitive function.
This is the one that I feel like always makes the headlines. I've seen studies suggesting a link between high fluoride exposure and lower IQ scores in kids.
Right. There have been studies mostly done in places with really high naturally occurring fluoride levels that suggest there might be some kind of correlation. But, and this is important, those studies often have limitations and there could be other factors at play.
So it's not a simple cause and effect situation.
Not at all. And I think more research is definitely needed to figure out what's really going on there with typical fluoride levels and cognitive development.
It's important to, keep a critical eye on those studies and not jump to conclusions.
Absolutely. And while it's crucial to, acknowledge and investigate those potential risks, it's also important to remember that major health organizations, like the World Health Organization, the CDC, they still endorse community water fluoridation, at least at the recommended levels, of course.
It seems like the main takeaway here is that the benefits and risks of fluoride are all about, like, finding the right balance.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
We need to really look at the evidence and consider, like, the whole picture.
I agree. It's about finding that sweet spot where, we can get the most benefit while minimizing any potential downsides. And that's where looking at how other countries approach fluoride can be really helpful.
All right, let's broaden our horizons a bit and explore how other countries are tackling this whole fluoride thing. I'm curious, what we can learn from their different strategies.
Yeah, it's actually pretty fascinating to see how various cultures and regions have sort of grappled with this issue, right? So while community water fluoridation is common in places like the US, you'll find all these other strategies being used elsewhere.
Like what? Give me some examples.
We'll take salt fluoridation, for instance. It's popular in some European or Latin American countries, and it's similar in principle to water fluoridation, aiming for that widespread fluoride exposure. But instead of putting it in the water, they add it to, well, table salt.
Oh, so you're getting your fluoride through your diet rather than your tap water.
Exactly, yep. Another approach is milk fluoridation, which has been used in some pilot programs, especially targeting school kids.
Milk fluoridation, that's a new one for me.
Yeah, it's not as widespread, but it can be a more focused way to, reach a specific group. And of course, there are always those targeted dental programs, things like fluoride varnishes and school-based mouth rinses, focusing on those higher risk groups or people with specific needs.
So it's a pretty diverse set of approaches out there, each with its own pros and cons, I'm guessing, not exactly a one-size-fits-all situation.
You got it. Different regions have different needs, different resources, different cultural preferences, so it makes sense that their fluoride strategies would be different too. But no matter the approach, I think one thing is clear. Fluoride has become this global conversation, prompting these big debates and forcing us to really think critically about how we approach public health issues like this.
It's a good reminder that even something as seemingly simple as fluoride can really touch on these, bigger issues like individual choice versus collective well-being, access to health care, and the role of science in shaping policies. It's a lot to unpack.
It definitely is. And as we go deeper into this whole fluoride saga, we'll uncover even more layers of complexity. We'll be looking into environmental considerations, ethical dilemmas, and the future of fluoride research. It's going to be a really fascinating journey.
I'm buckled up and ready for the ride.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so we're back and ready to, keep going on this fluoride deep dive. We've already talked about a lot, from how it was discovered and the benefits to the controversies and the different ways it's used around the world. But now I'm kind of curious about something we haven't really touched on yet, fluoride's impact on the environment.
Yeah, that's definitely an important aspect to consider. Remember how we talked about fluoride being a natural element, found in rocks and soil? Well, in some areas, those natural fluoride levels can actually be pretty high, especially in the groundwater.
Right. We briefly mentioned that when we were talking about skeletal fluorosis, but I'm guessing there's, more to it than that.
Oh, absolutely. High fluoride levels in groundwater can kind of have a domino effect on the whole ecosystem, affecting not only humans, but also plants and animals. Like, for instance, livestock that graze on plants with high fluoride from the soil can develop fluorosis, which can really impact their bone health and, overall well-being.
So it's not just a human health problem then. Fluoride in the environment has, like, this bigger ecological impact.
Exactly. And it's not just natural sources we have to think about either. Some industrial activities like aluminum smelting and making phosphate fertilizers can release fluoride into the air and water.
That makes sense since those industries often work with, like, minerals that contain fluoride.
Right. And if those industrial emissions aren't managed properly, well, they can lead to a buildup of fluoride in the environment, which can have some pretty bad effects. For example, high levels of fluoride can damage plants, reduce crop yields, and if it gets into water, it can harm aquatic life and disrupt those delicate ecosystems.
So it seems like a real balancing act, right? We want the benefits of fluoride for our teeth, but we also need to be careful about what it's doing to the environment.
Yeah, that's a key point. But the good news is there are ways to minimize that environmental impact. In areas with high fluoride groundwater, for example, there are technologies that can remove the fluoride from drinking water, making it safe for people.
Oh, so we can actually clean up the water. What are some of those technologies?
Well, there are several different methods depending on the situation and how much water needs to be treated. Activated alumina filters are pretty effective at removing fluoride. Bone char, which is made from animal bones, is another option. And then there are more high-tech solutions like reverse osmosis systems, which can be used in homes or even for whole communities to bring fluoride levels down to a safe range.
So we've got like a whole toolbox of solutions for fluoride in the water.
We do. And sometimes a simple and cost-effective solution is just mixing high fluoride water with low fluoride water to, dilute it. It's all about finding the right approach for each specific case.
Makes sense. But you know what they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So how can we prevent all that excess fluoride from getting into the environment in the first place?
That's a great question, and prevention is definitely key. It usually involves a multi-pronged approach, so to speak. First and foremost, we need tough regulations and good monitoring to control those industrial emissions. We need to make sure industries are following best practices for managing fluoride.
So basically, making sure they're not dumping tons of fluoride into the environment.
Exactly. But it's not just about rules and regulations. Public awareness is also super important. If we can educate people about the risks of high fluoride exposure and, how to handle fluoride responsibly, it can really empower them to make good choices and advocate for change.
I can see how raising awareness and making it a shared responsibility could make a difference.
For sure. It takes collaboration between governments, industries, and communities. We all have a part to play in protecting our environment and making sure it's healthy for future generations.
Well said. So we've talked about the environmental side of fluoride, but there's another dimension I think we should explore. The ethical and policy debates surrounding this, well, sometimes controversial element.
Ah, yes. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Fluoride is often at the center of these big discussions about individual rights versus public health. It triggers these passionate debates and raises some tough ethical questions.
I can see why that would be. On one hand, you have the potential benefits for dental health, which is obviously important. But then on the other hand, there are people with concerns about the risks and who don't like the idea of, putting something in the water. It raises questions about consent and choice.
You've hit the nail on the head. That's the core dilemma. The big debate often comes down to community water fluoridation, which is basically, as you said, adding fluoride to the water supply for everyone.
And it's that act of adding it to the water that some people find ethically problematic.
Exactly. Some people argue that it's like mass medication. Adding fluoride to the water without each person's consent. They believe everyone should have the right to decide whether or not they consume fluoride, even if it means missing out on the potential benefits for the community.
I get that perspective. It's their body, their choice. But I imagine those who support community water fluoridation have their own arguments.
Oh, they do. They often compare it to other public health measures that are pretty widely accepted, like adding iodine to salt or putting vitamins in cereal. Those things are done to improve overall health, even though not everyone specifically consents to it.
So it's that classic tension between personal freedom and the good of the public.
Exactly. And this whole ethical debate gets even more complicated when you consider that community water fluoridation can really help people who might not have regular access to dental care, often in lower income communities. By making sure everyone gets some fluoride through the water, it can help level the playing field and reduce those oral health disparities between different groups.
So it becomes a social justice issue as well.
Absolutely. Access to affordable dental care and preventative measures like fluoride isn't always equal, and community water fluoridation can be a way to address those inequalities.
But I'm sure those who oppose it would argue that there are other ways to achieve those goals without, what they see as forcing fluoride on people.
You're right. They often suggest alternative ways to get fluoride, like through salt or milk or targeted dental programs. Those alternatives, they say, give people a choice while still offering fluoride to those who want it.
So it's not an all-or-nothing situation. There's a whole range of approaches, each with its own ethical and practical considerations.
Absolutely. It's a complex issue with no easy answers. And at the end of the day, the decision of what to do, whether to add fluoride to the water or try other strategies, often falls to local communities and policymakers. They have to weigh the evidence, think about the ethical side of things, and have open and honest conversations with the public.
Makes sense. It's a decision that shouldn't be taken lightly.
Nope. There's no single solution when it comes to fluoride. What works in one place might not work somewhere else. It's about finding the best approach for each community, taking into account the science, the ethics, and the needs and values of the people who live there.
This whole conversation has given me a lot to think about. Fluoride is clearly more than just something in toothpaste. It's connected to so many parts of our lives, our health, the environment, our ethics, and our policies. It's like A reminder that even simple things can be really complex.
Couldn't agree more. It's fascinating how one tiny element can spark all these discussions and make us think about those big questions about science, society, and the choices we make.
Well, I'm ready to keep exploring and see where this leads us next. We've covered the past and present of fluoride, but what about the future? What's next for this little ion that's caused so much debate? What new discoveries, new technologies, and new ways of thinking are on the horizon?
That's a great question. The future of fluoride research is full of exciting possibilities. We've got personalized fluoride treatments, smart toothpaste, and even digital health technologies changing the way we approach oral health. And that's exactly what we'll be diving into in the final part of our deep dive. So stay tuned.
All right, welcome back for the last part of our fluoride deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? From the history of fluoride research, the science behind how it fights cavities, to all those environmental and ethical considerations. But now I want to look ahead. What's next for this element that's caused so much discussion?
It really is fascinating to think about where fluoride research is headed. There's a lot of exciting work being done that could really change how we think about oral health in the coming years. One area that's especially interesting is the development of, more targeted and personalized approaches to how we deliver fluoride.
Personalized fluoride treatments. Sounds pretty futuristic. What are researchers thinking about?
Well, imagine instead of just relying on these broad methods like, community water fluoridation, we could actually tailor fluoride exposure to each person's individual needs and risk factors.
That would be pretty amazing. But how would that even work?
One possibility is developing these controlled release devices that could be put into dental materials or even implanted, delivering a steady and really precise dose of fluoride right to the teeth over a long period of time.
So like tiny fluoride time-release capsules in our teeth. No more worrying about how much toothpaste to use.
Exactly. It could totally revolutionize how we do preventative dental care. And then there's also research into developing smart toothpaste formulations.
Okay, smart toothpaste. Now that's really got my attention. What makes it so smart?
Well, think of a toothpaste that can actually sense the pH level in your mouth or detect the bacteria that cause cavities. And then, based on that information, it adjusts how much fluoride it releases.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like having this mini dental lab right there in your bathroom, constantly analyzing things and keeping your teeth healthy. Amazing. So what else is coming down the pipeline in fluoride research?
Well, there's a lot of research going on right now to understand those long-term effects of low-dose fluoride exposure, especially on the brain, thyroid, and other organs.
Right, we talked about that earlier. We know a lot about the short-term safety of fluoride, at least at the levels that are recommended, but those long-term, more subtle impacts, there's still a lot to learn about those.
Exactly. Those long-term studies are really important for refining our safety guidelines and, addressing the concerns some people have about those potential risks. The more we know, the better decisions we can make about using fluoride.
It's all about getting more data, more information. But it's not just about the science itself, right? There are also those social and behavioral factors that affect oral health, too.
Absolutely. Fluoride can be a powerful tool, but is not a magic bullet. We need to address those bigger social issues that play a role, things like poverty, access to healthy food, and education about oral hygiene.
So it's about taking this kind of holistic approach, combining scientific advances with social change. That's how we create a healthier future for everyone.
Exactly. And speaking of a healthier future, there's this whole field of digital health that has the potential to really transform how we manage our oral health, and that includes fluoride too.
Digital health and oral health. I'm all ears.
Well, imagine having apps on your phone that can track your fluoride exposure from different sources, monitor how well you're brushing, give you personalized tips for oral hygiene, and even connect you with dental professionals remotely.
Wow. It's like having a virtual dental assistant right there in your pocket.
Yeah.
That could really change things, especially for people who live in remote areas or have trouble accessing dental care.
Yeah, that's the idea. Integrating technology with public health could revolutionize how we approach oral health, and fluoride is definitely a part of that.
This deep dive has been truly eye-opening. We've covered so much, from those first discoveries about fluoride's benefits to all those debates surrounding its use, and now we've even had a glimpse into the future of fluoride research.
It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? And I think it really shows how science is always evolving. What we know today might be different tomorrow, and that's okay. The key is to stay curious, keep asking those questions, and be open to new information.
I agree. We've come such a long way from those first observations of stained teeth and the mystery of why they didn't have cavities. Who knew that fluoride would lead us down such a complex and interesting path?
It really is a great example of how even something as seemingly simple as one element can have this huge impact on our lives and spark these big conversations about science, ethics, and public health.
So as we wrap up this fluoride exploration, what's the one thing you'd like our listeners to take away from this?
I think the most important takeaway is that fluoride, like many things in life, isn't inherently good or bad. It's a tool, and how it affects us depends on how we use it.
That's a great point. We need to approach fluoride with a balanced perspective, being aware of both the potential benefits and the potential risks.
Exactly. By staying informed, having those open discussions, and really embracing that balanced view, we can use fluoride responsibly to improve oral health for everyone.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible deep dive into the world of fluoride. We hope you enjoyed the journey and maybe learned a thing or two along the way.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to all our listeners out there, remember to stay curious, keep exploring, and keep those smiles bright.